All right, 1 Samuel 25, let's call this one Unbelievable and subtitle it Nabal's Folly. Why? Because as we promised in the last chapter, we're going to talk about a man by the name of Nabal. But it's not just Nabal's story, because he is going to have a beautiful and wise wife by the name of Abigail, who could have saved his life if he would have listened. And we don't really see her trying to talk to him. What we do see, however, are his servants, meaning Nabal's servants, intervening to try to save everybody's life on Nabal's property. Because what is going to happen is David is going to come across Nabal at a time when it seems like he's preparing to have a feast, maybe. And so he is going to send messengers to Nabal, simply asking them for anything they might have left over. Nabal, however, is going to answer David harshly. His servants are going to observe what he does, and they're going to get really scared. Why? Because they're going to go to his wife, Abigail, and they're going to conclude their warning to her after saying, these aren't just men who were hanging around. These men, without asking us, protected us. And ultimately, we would try to talk to Nabal. But in verse 17, it's going to say, now therefore know this and consider what you should do, for harm is determined against our master and against all his house. And he is such a worthless man that we cannot speak to him. The first thing that's shocking is the fact that they can talk to his wife that way about him. Understanding that this might not be the first time he was difficult to talk to, giving us a throwback to something we mentioned before with Saul. In a situation where a man becomes powerful, or a person becomes powerful enough that they can shut down the voices of reason around them, it doesn't mean that the eyes attached to those voices stop seeing. It just means that they stop communicating things that could actually be helpful to that individual. And that's what we're seeing here, where Abigail realizes likewise she can't necessarily go talk to Nabal, so she has to go reason with David directly. And in doing that, she not only saves Nabal and her household for a while, but she saves David from blood guilt, understanding that even though David is going to be described as a man of blood, he does not have free reign to kill whoever he wants. And before this chapter is over, when David snaps out of it after Abigail is able to reason with him, unlike Nabal, David is going to confess that he was potentially about to kill the innocent with the guilty in taking vengeance with his own hand. And the interesting thing about the end of this story is that after David cools down, God is going to intervene and dial up the consequences on Nabal after Abigail gives him time to actually make merry or have plenty of drink when he actually does go ahead and throw that party. When he sobers up the next morning, she's going to tell him what almost happened to him. And he is going to basically almost become paralyzed with fear, and God's is going to go ahead and kill him anyway. So she's going to become a widow. David's going to end up marrying her, and the lesson for us may be this. Look, to the degree we have the ability to say whatever we want, it's a huge blessing. But as we mentioned before, it comes with a huge responsibility. See, because David was a man that was renowned and beloved by the people at this point, largely because it seems that he was keen to show mercy in all situations. But there's a legal principle that this story reminded me of, and it's called the eggshell skull rule, otherwise known as the thin skull rule. This definition from Cornell Law School's website is going to say the eggshell skull rule, also known as the thin skull rule, is a common law doctrine that makes a defendant liable for the plaintiff's unforeseen and uncommon reactions to the defendant's negligent or intentional tort. In recent times, we've seen that in attacks on the elderly, in situations where you get used to fighting with people of a certain age group at a certain health level. You cannot necessarily deal with the elderly in the same way. And we've seen a number of elderly people die in assaults simply from being pushed over to the ground. Likewise, understand that goes to the flip side. See, a person who's used to cutting people a pass, when you come at them the same way that others have come at them before, you don't necessarily get them in the same condition that others have found them in before. Understanding that kindness for kindness' sake is probably just a good thing to practice, but practicing kindness comes with the additional wisdom of being able to avoid unforeseen sore spots that people are carrying inwardly, even if they are not showing them outwardly. Understanding that the greatest danger in Nabal's story wasn't so much David's reaction as much as it was God's willingness to bring unbelievably quick consequences at a time when outwardly it wasn't obvious that David was really going through it, but inwardly God saw how much he was going through, and he wasn't willing to allow him to suffer anymore.